Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Monster Monday. We're doing the aberrations series, and we're moving on to another very nightmarish and scary creature. It's the floating brain thing called the Grell. So the Grell is one of those things where you see the picture and immediately it should like evoke terror in the party. Like when they see this picture, they should be scared. What's funny though is that the challenge rating's 3 and they're not actually that powerful of an aberration. So I have some ideas about how we can use Grell in kind of an interesting way and how to scale them and make them a little more terrifying, because I feel like when you see that picture, you should be scared. So let's take a look at what these Grell are and what they're all about. The Grell resembles a bulbous floating brain with a wide, sharp beak. Its 10 long tentacles are made of hundreds of ring-shaped muscles sheathed in tough, fibrous hide. Sharp barbs line the tip of each tentacle and inject paralytic venom. The Grell can partially retract its barbs into its tentacles to handle or manipulate objects it doesn't want to pierce or tear. So think Portuguese Manowar, but not, or like a jellyfish. You know what I mean? It's got those like stingers, right? But it's not floating in the water; it's floating in air. And instead of a blob for a head, it's got a freaking brain and a sharp beak. See what I mean? Nightmarish. It should be terrifying. Grells have no eyes, and they float by means of a sort of levitation. They have keen hearing, however, and their skin is sensitive to vibrations and electrical fields, allowing them to detect the presence of creatures and objects in their immediate vicinity. The creature's ability to manipulate electricity to sense and move also allow it to absorb lightning without harm. Although solitary by nature, Grells sometimes gather in small groups called covens. Dude, what animal gathers in a group called a coven? I mean, other than witches. See what I mean? Where I'm going with this? It should be terrifying. Floating ambushers. A Grell prefers to ambush lone creatures or stragglers, hovering silently near the passes below, whereupon it descends quickly and wraps its tentacles around its prey. It then floats away to its lair with the paralyzed creature in its clutches. Again, if that description doesn't speak of terror to your party, but challenge rating 3. Alien devourers. Grell are alien predators that group other creatures into 3 categories: edibles, inedibles, and great eaters, those rare creatures that might prey on a Grell. Grells have no compunction about attacking creatures they classify as edible, including humanoids. They tend to avoid bigger creatures that they have little hope of carrying away. A Grell will sometimes allow adventurers to wage war on the other monstrous inhabitants of the dungeon complex it calls home, staying out of the adventurer's way as they dispose of larger threats while waiting for the right time to strike. Imagine, if you will, the Portuguese Manowar that doesn't need the water to float because it can just float through magnetic, electromagnetic fields, a sort of levitation. This is a very alien-sounding creature to me. This is the kind of creature that actually would work beyond just Dungeons and Dragons. If you wanted to do a mashup, the old Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, for those of you who aren't familiar, that was a OG module that involved a spaceship crash landing in a D&D-ish world, and lasers and aliens, right? Boom. So, but this Grell could be in any of those kind of settings. It could also, when I say it could be in any of those settings, I also mean it could be anywhere. Let me posit this for you. Suppose, for example, that you have a really smart wizard or a warlock or a something, and they figure out a way to communicate with the Grell and to kind of come to an agreement so that the Grell recognizes them as a great eater or inedible. And the Grell become basically guardians of the wizard's tower or the domain of the blah, 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 or the keep of blah, or the dungeon of blah, blah, blah. They're not dumb. They have an intelligence of 12. So maybe they could be kind of, I don't want to say bargained with, but, you know, in a sense, like come to some kind of term or some understanding wherein they live and they are free to eat anyone who trespasses, and in return, the wizard or the whatever, the coven of bad guys, will feed them and provide them with, you know, easy picking edibles. Okay. So while this might be a solitary, and indeed it does speak of it in that fashion, I think, when I think about how to upscale these dudes, for sure, quantity. Okay, so let's start off with the basics. As is, this is a challenge rating 3 creature. AC 12, hit points, average hit points of 55. They have 10-foot movement speed or a hovering fly speed of 30. They're immune to lightning. They cannot be blinded. They have blind sight of 60 feet. Yeesh. Multi-attack. 2 attacks, one with tentacles and one with its beak. The tentacle attack is +4 to hit, reach of 10, 1d10 plus 2 piercing, and the target must succeed on a DC 11 con save or be poisoned for 1 minute. The target is also grappled. Escape is a DC 15. If the target is medium or smaller, it's restrained. So all the basic rules, right, with any of your tentacle type of creatures. The beak attack is +4 to hit and does 2d4 plus 2 damage. So, 2 attacks per round. I think that a low-level party, if you wanted to throw one of these at a low-level party, you could. You could. You just lower some of those elements. I'd leave its armor class where it is, but I'd lower its hit points, and I would lower the punishing pain of its tentacle and beak damage. So that's an easy way to throw this into the mix. At mid-level, these as-is are fine. And even at, like, upper mid-level, 6 through 10, 7 through 10, you could have a couple of these. Now, high-level is where this could really get fun, because imagine that you have a coven of Grell. And suppose for a second that you scaled up this coven of Grell so that they all get more tentacle attacks, number one. Number two, the con save versus their poison is higher because these are more powerful Grell. Maybe you make some of them large. You boost their hit points. Maybe these elder Grell have grown a carapace over their brain. So you have a higher armor class, more hit points, and more piercing, tentacle poisoned attacks with them. I think that's very feasible. And if you add a ton of these here, now they're all working together, and you don't even have to have a ton. Like, I'm thinking like 6 of them against, a higher level party would truly be a challenge. Alien Devourers. So let's get back to that horror, terrifying, nightmarish thing. What if instead of the wizard or whoever, the warlock, what if instead of some external person kind of luring the Grell in and coming to an agreement with them about being guardians, what if there was a great elder Grell? Like, in Aliens, where like there's the mother alien and she's birthing all the eggs, and all the other aliens like follow the queen, you know what I mean? Imagine if you have like the queen Grell. Yeah. And they're, instead of large, they're huge. So you make the normal Grells that are medium, like those are your average Grells. And then you have some large Grells with the carapace over their brains and more attacks. And then you have the big bad end queen Grell, who is huge, who has, 5 attacks, and it's DC 20 con save against the poison, and it's just more damage. You know what I mean? Maybe they could also do psychic damage. Like, imagine if the queen had like a screech that was an area effect that basically did what like a fear effect, or a psychic attack that if you failed your saving throw against them, you got disadvantage on all your skill checks and attacks for the following round, Something like that. Something where you can actually build an entire layer and adventure around the Grell. But we must always backtrack as well. As DMs, we have to think about why would your party choose to go into this nightmarish place? You got to have some awesome incentive. And if they outthink you, if your players outthink you as a DM, and they come to some way to resolve this issue with the Grells, the Grell colony, they should be able to get the much sought after thing that you have made into the dangling carrot that they want. So what could that be? Perhaps the Grell, because they're sort of an alien, aberration. Perhaps the Queen Grell has some immensely powerful thing. And when I think of immensely powerful things, it could be a collection of medium powerful things, or it could be one immensely powerful thing. But in some way, it has to be something that the party as a whole will benefit from, not just one person. So if it's an immensely powerful thing, maybe it's something that some other really powerful wizard wants the party to acquire because they need it for some super immensely powerful thing. And they will grant to each member of the party a special item or a magical whatever, okay? Or maybe you don't want to have that NPC involvement and you just want to have the Grell being in possession of a collection of valuable things. So whatever it is, whatever you choose, pour over the treasures, but identify that, that in this storyline, this colony of Grell started long ago, maybe centuries ago, when this strange comet landed in this region in your campaign, and it bore out this enormous crater, and anything that was alive around that crater disappeared over the course of the next few days and nights, and people started to avoid it because they thought it was like haunted, or they thought it was caused some sickness or whatever. And really, it was, a Grell, a single Grell that maybe, had started building a lair and deposited her eggs. And those eggs then hatched and grew into Grell. And this, Grell queen continued to stay in this, basically this region's, fruitful. There's a lot of animals and a lot of potential food that can be eaten, a lot of edible things. And so over decades then, those baby Grell grew up to be larger, and then, the queen continued to grow larger and reproduce. And so you have multiple generations of Grell in what is much more than any coven. And they've grown into a Grell colony in this region. Now, they're not inherently maybe leaving this region to go terrorize other things. So maybe at first in your campaign, your party could, stumble onto a lesser Grell, and they defeat it, right? Or maybe they don't defeat it. Maybe they attack it, and the Grell's losing the battle, and the Grell runs away. Now, they're not dumb. They have an intelligence of 12, and they could communicate with each other. So what if the Grell went back to the colony and was like, hey, and explained that, what was going on? Or maybe the party followed the Grell back to the colony, and the guards on the perimeter of the colony's, land holdings drove the party away. And later on, at mid-level, the party, finds out more about this rumor of this, comet that crashed, this meteor, this asteroid that crashed in the region generations ago. Maybe there's something, maybe it crashed into something. Here's another variation. Maybe there was an old castle, right? With, towers and gold and wizards and blah, blah, blah. And a freaking asteroid storm pelted this castle and destroyed it. And there were no survivors. And the people in the region, from towns that are 10 miles away will talk about the old castle and the ruins, but no one ever comes back alive from there, blah, blah, blah. So, the typical hook, and maybe your group's thinking oh, well, it's a goblin base now, or maybe there's undead there. No, there's no undead or goblins. There's Grell, just small, medium, large, and uber Grell, right? So you can flex any number of options, right, to get your party there, whether it's planting the seeds of potential, adventures and dungeons or mysteries, or, outright, you could have an NPC tell them, like, there's this weird, colony of these aberrations, but it's right on top of a diamond mine, or it's right on top of the old tower that contained the circle of Ioun stones. I don't know. Just, whatever the hook is going to be to get the party to want to go there. And you could scale the Grell accordingly. So a lot of opportunity, man. And that's like just one fragment, right? You could set this anywhere. I mean, theoretically, it could be like an Arctic setting. It could be a desert mountainous setting, Wherever the Grell might have gone to, as long as there's like ample food sources, that would explain why they'd stay there. As long as you have a rationale for them to be there, then you could figure out a rationale for why a party would want to go mess with them in the first place, Some things are better left alone. I get it. Maybe it's hard to think of a hook to get your party to go to, confront the Grell and to attack them, or to try to infiltrate their colony and steal the magical diamonds that they need, or whatever. Maybe they're not going to even use combat at all. Maybe your party's going to be smart and they're going to avoid combat. I don't know that they're going to be able to negotiate with the Grell, but they could try. So I think this is cool because, again, like a lot of the other aberrations, there's a lot of flexibility in how you can use them. I'm gonna make a bold assertion here, okay? If you really wanted to flip the script, I'm going to say that you could pull a Drizzt. Now you might be like, Bill, what do you mean by pulling a Drizzt? What I mean is, the Drow have been painted as this culturally evil race, right? Like, they're evil. That's what they do. But Drizzt is the exception. By pulling Drizzt, I mean basically you can have a Grell who is part of the colony but doesn't like being a Grell. You could have a Grell who kind of wants to betray the colony because the Grell does not like how the colony has basically just, sucked up all of the natural resources in this region. And the Grell just wants to kind of find some level of like harmony with nature. Some kind of, peaceful symbiotic relationship. But maybe this one Grell is, such an individual when the colony is more of a, a hive mind and everybody falls in line with the queen. So that's what I mean by pulling a Drizzt. Now, would this Grell be an interesting NPC to interact with socially? It would be a challenge because they speak Grell, and that's all. So I guess if you had characters who really wanted to socially interact with the Grell and try to find a non-combat solution, you could keep that Drizzt Grell up your sleeve as an option. And maybe that Drizzt Grell would help them to get to the inner sanctum of the queen and steal the magical diamonds that the party needs if they will help the Grell to escape. Some kind of negotiation. Anyway, you never know what your players are going to come up with, but those are just a few of the ideas that popped into my mind when I was kind of thinking through this one. So again, yet another kind of interesting aberration. A lot of flexibility for scaling them down or up for sure. And definitely just going past like Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like I could see these Grell being in a post-apocalyptic or sci-fi setting, or I could even see them being the stuff of nightmares in a Monster of the Week or Call of Cthulhu kind of setting. So a lot of really cool ways that you could use the Grell. But hopefully this has been helpful or entertaining or informative. If you have any good stories as a player of when you encountered a Grell, or as a DM when you used a Grell in one of your games, make sure you tell those stories in the comments below because I like to read them, and so do most of the other folks in the community. So until then, I ask you humbly, please subscribe, give this video a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Doesn't really matter to me as long as you're being honest. I appreciate you. Until we meet again, happy dice rolling. a minute, Mr. Postman. Wait, Mr. Postman. Grell. Mr. Postman, look and see. Gith Yankee. Gith Zerai. Is there a letter in your bag for me? Hello, I am Gith Zerai. Where the f*** are these Grells? Oh, there we go. Oh, it's a scary brain creature.
Well, what's wrong with society?
What's wrong with society? I'll tell you what's wrong, Carafa.
Stand up.
I'll tell you what's wrong with society. Read my gut. Ooh. Can you see it?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Well, hello, it's me, Wizzy. I'm back once again to remind you to subscribe and click on the notifications button, and also watch videos that are over there. And then don't forget to tune in to the next episode of whatever show you are just watching, and crafting videos and DM tips and pro tips for vlogging and all sorts of gaming things. And also you could watch Bill eat food and watch other shows featuring Bill. He made me say that because he's a narcissist. Okay, bye.